Thank you, Dave, and thank all of you for coming. I'm just the guy to follow Bob Knight. That was quite a tribute. I'm struggling with my voice here. And Irv would, I guarantee he would enjoy seeing me struggle. Promise you that. I started working with Irv in 1981, various radio stations, and for 37 years. And he pretty much taught me what I knew about radio. I didn't have any experience. I didn't have any kind of a degree. Somebody like me would never get hired today or be given that chance. But for some reason it worked. And, you know, Irv he was my kind of guy. If you listen to us, you know we did not spend a lot of time contemplating the inequities of life. We'd go back and forth, the daily back and forth of the sports news of that particular day. And of course everybody knew that Irv was the real expert, and I just pretended like I was. But he thought that was funny, and somehow we did make that work. And I can guarantee you I never had more fun in my life. And any of you, Irv used to say, hey, you know, anybody can do talk radio, the trick's to get paid. And he was right. On the morning of his passing, I was talking to Terry Fry, and Terry asked me about my recollections, my memories of Irv, and of course, I was still trying to process what I heard. Casey had called me earlier that morning, and I don't know, I think I was ready for it, but I really wasn't. You know, it just seemed like Irv would always be there. And I was talking to Terry and trying to come up with something profound to say. And I thought for a minute. You know, I don't think I ever met anybody who had a bigger impact on the sports landscape of Colorado than Irv Brown. The relationships that he had formed over the years, and the people, we would be out, you know, doing remote broadcasts. This used to drive me crazy. You know, people would come up, he'd just start shooting the breeze with them. I said, Irv, we're on the radio. You know, he said, they're talking, and, you know, how's your brother? Yeah, he played for me. How's your dad? Irv knew everybody. And everywhere I went, when I wasn't with Irv, like Fort Collins or Pueblo or Colorado Springs, it didn't matter. People would ask me, how's Irv? And when they did, they'd always have a smile on their face. And, hey, look, nobody likes everybody, right? There's got to be a few. I never met anybody that didn't like Irv. That's the way it was with him. And they'd always start smiling. And his phenomenal memory with names, and I know all of you here know what I'm talking about. Irv could come up with a name. Sometimes you might have to jog his memory a little bit, but you know what? He'd come up with the name, and he was interested in people. He showed a genuine interest. He made people feel important. And excuse me here. He made people feel important. And another thing, he was a walking employment agency. He was always trying to get people jobs, you know, and he did it. I mean, he helped my family out. My son went to work a couple of different places that Irv recommended him to. Irv had every contact in the world. Matter of fact, you all know I wouldn't be standing here myself if it weren't for Irv Brown. And there's another one, I picked one over here, that wouldn't either. Although Dave may have had a little bit more on the ball than I did, but he might have gone through without it. But Irv helped everybody. He's always trying to get people, this was mentioned earlier, he's always trying to get people jobs as referees. And I'm sure many of you out here, you know, you got he tried to get me into it back whenever I was young and pretty. But I told him I could never make the block charge. He said, oh yeah, sure, there's nothing to it, you just sell it. And that's what Irv was. He was a born salesman. The morning that Irv slipped away from us, Terrence Miles was getting ready to go to work. Terrence had worked for us as a board op and a producer at a couple of different radio stations. A great kid, you just needed a little Irv and Joe guidance. And later that day, Terrence was the back judge in the Super Bowl just 2 weeks ago, and he's here with us today. You know, Irv will never be mistaken for a farmer by anybody. What he was a born salesman. Irv could sell a donkey to a Democrat. He would sell, whether he was hustling ads for whatever radio station that we were at, or selling a call, maybe on Bill Walton, trying to make him figure out. You just heard Bob Knight refer to it, and we'll get to that later. But Irv was always closing. He was that kind of a guy. And he probably didn't realize it at the time, but he was closing the deal on his own legacy. Irv was also pretty good at selling himself. You heard a reference earlier to Irv's broadcasting the first football game ever on ESPN. And I believe that was 1979 maybe, and Dave Brady probably know. 1979, and that was Colorado and Oregon. But that's not all he broadcasted. You know, back then, ESPN was nothing like it is today. They needed programming, they needed content. They put stuff on that nobody in their right mind would ever watch. Now, I can take this back if it doesn't go over, but but they were doing bowling on ESPN, you know, and of course they needed people to do this stuff. And they call Irv, and they say, Irv, can you do bowling? He said, sure, I can do bowling. I've been doing it all my life. He said, well, can you get out to Bristol, Connecticut? I was, oh yeah, I'll be out there. And then the next thing you know, it'd be billiards. And then they had people doing bodybuilding. And here's Irv, he's out there, he's trying to describe these bodybuilders and what those scabs are on people's backs. And I said, Irv, you're embarrassing yourself. You don't know anything about this stuff. He said, oh, don't worry about it. I read about it on the plane.